Hello and happy Saturday. It's kind of an odd day for me to be uploading a video, but I really enjoy watching process videos and wanted to try making one myself. So I'm doing that for the last day of this Magical Girl week. I started the week with Sally the Witch, who was the first animated Magical Girl. However, she is predated by a Magical Girl manga, Akko-Chan's Secret, Himitsu no Akko-Chan, which I am drawing today as the final. What I do first off is take a kind of broad regular wooden pencil to start blocking out my shapes where I want everything to go. In this case, I also go ahead and block out the clothes, because an interesting thing about 60s anime is that everything seems to be of a part. Like I don't know if this is actually how they did that, but it has the feel of them drawing the clothes on as part of the character rather than blocking out the body and then drawing in the clothes after. I don't know if this is actually the case, but it has that look, especially with how, with the big puffy sleeves that they have, the shoulders often seem a little bit detached from the rest of the body. I don't know if I'm explaining that adequately. That's just the feel that it often has. Doing a shh to go with the secret motif here. Boy, I've got it. That looks a little more like a thumb than a forefinger right now, but we're just roughly blocking out right now, and I will fix that later. Pinafore here. And the reason I'm doing a bust for Akko, or I did a full body for Sally, is I wanted to really put her magic compact on display. It's like Sailor Moon wasn't the first warrior magical girl, but for a while magical girls were very often less warriors than regular little girls who use their magic to solve a problem of the week rather than fight a monster of the week. Akko uses her mirror to transform, for instance. Okay. And her elbow here. And of course I have my references open over here on my laptop. Don't try to draw without them. You'll be sad, even if you're sure you know how to draw this character or object. And it's especially important in this case, actually, because of course I've never actually drawn Akko before. So I need to make sure I've got the small details right. Adding in a little more detail in the face. 60s anime has these very distinctive, tall, narrow eyes where you have the eyelashes on the front rather than in the outside corner like you usually see with modern anime. It's very prominent in Tezuka, Astro Boy, Kemba. All of those have those front lashed, monochrome, tall eyes. Although Astro and Kemba do have brown eyes in some artwork, but most often you are going to see solid black eyes with just these round highlights. It's a very, very distinct look that very old anime has, and it's really appealing. I like it a lot. With these tall heads and low set ears. And then looking at my reference, she's got 3 bangs like this. And then it comes down to her ears. Get a little curl here. I like drawing thick sideburns and little curls around ears like that, so that's... And in my rough, her ear is actually visible on the other side, so I wouldn't normally draw it like that, but to keep the look, I will put that in there. She's got a headband here, which in the color manga covers, the headband is kind of interesting looking. It looks like it was painted directly on. It doesn't really have any outlines, but I can't as easily do that in pencil work, so that's going to have to fall by the wayside, unfortunately, but get the rest of her look more or less accurate here. Akko has actually been remade twice. This is a fun fact. She was voiced in the 1988 version by the original voice actress for Sailor Galaxia. So that's a fun one to kind of picture. Okay. To refine her fingers on her compact here. Hand a little shorter, narrow out her wrist before it widens out to the elbow. Add in the bottom part of her sleeve. And get to her other hand here. Draw her thumb in. Other fingers here. That's not great, but we can fix it in the next stage. This is just getting everything down, including the star in her mirror. And we've got that. The next thing I'm going to do is take my kneaded eraser. This one is getting old. I should probably actually get out a new one soon. See where I didn't put in her lower eyelid there. There we go, that's better. And just roll it over. That lightens up these lines here, gets us to where I can see what I'm doing to more refine it, and I can distinguish the old lines from the new ones. I learned rolling the kneaded eraser over this from another YouTube channel, Oliver's Antics, and as he put it, it's kind of the equivalent to turning down the opacity. Normally it would work more thoroughly than that, but I actually kind of marked more darkly than I normally do. And even now I can see like things I need to correct, like her eyes and eyebrows aren't quite even. But I'm going to start actually with the refined sketch. Now, if this were something I were planning to finish, like ink and color with markers or something like that, I would probably go through 2 or 3 more sketch stages. But as this is just a daily sketch to go in my daily sketch notebook, it doesn't get quite that much attention. And this whole step is just choosing the lines I like and deepening them out. Here's where I'll even up her eyes a little. As a general rule, you don't want to draw one eye completely and then draw the other one completely. What works best, at least for me, you can do it a different way if you want. If it works better for you to draw the entire eye and then draw the other entire eye, that's what works best for you, and that's fine. But me, I find it helpful to do each part individually, like do my lids for one eye and then move on to the next. Do the pupils for one eye and then on to the second, and then do the highlights for one and on to the second. I do this because it helps keep me monitoring, make sure everything is more or less even. Got the 60s one-sided front eyelashes. Actually reminds me a little bit of like 50s Barbies. They have these very strong eyelashes in one direction. Now I'm not going to fill in her eyes just yet. I'm going to finish the rest of her facial features to before I do any shading. I'll pretty much finish out all this outlining. And as I go, I kind of carefully erase these little bits. This is a tiny eraser that I also got on Jet Pens. It's a Tombow Mono Zero, and it's really good for getting into those tiny details. And then I also have a big one for when I want to do a lot of erasing. And I don't like to brush crumbs away with my hand because that's how you smear. I have this fancy feather one at home. When I am out and about, I use a makeup brush because it fits in my pencil case, and the feather doesn't, but I use the feather at home. I like it. It feels very fancy. Got her eyebrows a little more even there. That looks much better. Now I can handle her fingers of this hand that I struggled a little bit with. I have a very angular fingers in this particular art style, so it helps to keep the joints in mind. I mean, it helps to keep the joints in mind in whatever style you're trying to draw hands in, but it's particularly helpful here. And it doesn't really show up in the original art style, but this little crease here helps emphasize where the finger is bending, if you can see here. Down to her elbow. Re-thicken where I erased here, and up to the upper arm where I can do a much cleaner and neater version of where it joins her sleeve, like so. I want to draw the collar before the sleeve because it kind of comes over it in the art style. Making her neck a bit thinner here than I did in the initial sketch because I'm not concerned with it looking exactly like the original manga art, but some keeping in the style is nice. Then I don't erase all the lines because this is just a sketch. It's not that critical. This isn't a refined picture or commission or anything like that, but just to neaten it up a little. And then I thicken a little where lines meet there. Come down on her pinafore. Now that I have her finger fully drawn, I can get her mouth more into place. And get that up here. Next I'm going to deal with her other hand. A thing I have some particular difficulties with is making sure hands are more or less the same size, but that fingers will measure with my fingers here. Yeah, that's about right. For a second it looked like her index finger on the mirror was a little long, but it was that I was measuring part of the hand as part of the finger. Perfectly serviceable little hand here, but I'm going to take my thicker eraser. I'm going to do, see, I just did absent-mindedly swiped with my hand, but luckily I didn't go over anything dark and smear it. Instead, thin her wrist out there. That's a smaller area, so I use the baby. Just a little bit of a 3-dimension on the mirror here. Clean that up just a bit. Bottom of the compact. And then draw in the star. And from there we just keep darkening up the lines on the rest of her features. I almost forgot to draw in the puff sleeve on this side. Which that's not uncommon for me. I'll get focused on one part of the drawing and overlook a different part. Sometimes I've got something completely uploaded and I notice, oh, I didn't fill this in, or go back over that, and I have to re-upload it. And that's why when I'm doing something more serious that I would be doing the 2 and 3 sketch phases on and so on and so forth, I will try to wait 24 hours before I post it so I can look at it with fresh eyes and make sure I haven't screwed anything up. Actually, for big stuff, I like to wait 24 hours between sketch and line and between line and color, but it's like reading back over your fan fiction or something. It's always best to look at it with fresh eyes. A little bit of fresh bit there for this. Anyway, though, Akko is now, her resketch is done, so we can start cleaning up a little. It's where I drew in the roundness of the mirror before adding in her hand and arm. It's always a good idea to completely draw things. You can erase it later. Just gonna do some simple hatching for her hair. Just do that completely. I'm not super concerned with this being perfect, which I don't usually do hatching like this on things that I intend to be serious pieces, because I will get obsessed with making everything perfect and even, which is actually not a great idea because it looks a lot less, I'd say, organic that way, but I find things to obsess over and then obsess over them, so it's just how it is sometimes. It's good to recognize these weaknesses in yourself, I suppose. But just continuing with hatching the hair. Second pigtail. The second pigtail is exactly the sort of thing I would forget. And then for her eyes, I'll just fill in completely aside from the shines. Get that 60s black eyes look in. And for the red part of her dress, just take my my wooden pencil again and fill that in. I like to use this wooden pencil for my initial blocking because it doesn't really do fine lines very well unless I sharpen it within an inch of its life, which I rarely do. So I can just get in shapes without having the ability to obsess over how exact and perfect a line is. Second stage sketch is for when you worry about how good your lines are, or even third stage. Yeah, I'm not looking for this to be perfect either. The main idea is just differentiated from her arms and undershirt there. In some art she has red stripes on the undershirt, but I'm not going to do that. I think for this particular picture that might look a little too busy. So we're just gonna color in the main dress. And then do the same but very lightly for her headband and ribbons, which are pink. Just to make it clear that they're not white like the shirt. And just for the heck of it, I'll put some star and bubble effects around her. And the recurring phrase of her theme song. Who is that? I use kana for the dare, partly because that's how it looks in the little subtitles on her theme song, and partly because dare is a kanji that I can usually recognize visually, but I have a hard time writing. I think it's and this radical here, and then this 1, 2, 3. Except that these two parts should be the same size, and it's a hard kanji for me for some reason. I can read it, but it's hard to write. Anyway, that is how I do these daily sketches, just a quick run through. And I have my Kirby pencil board to keep me from putting indents on the next page. And then the last thing I do is write in the date. This pen is a TWSBI Diamond. It's very pretty. You can see it's got rainbow effect on the nib as well as the body, and it has a clear body, which I like because I can see the ink level. I'm using a sparkly purple ink. It's a Imperial Violet, and this is my favorite pen. That is it. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow for the Sunday tour.